Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. Happy Tuesday. Jay Zawaski, Greg Boysen, and Mario Tirabassi here with you today. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you. It is rank week here on CHGO Sports, and we're going to continue with our rankings today. Yesterday was the top 10 goalies in Blackhawks history. Today we're going to hit the top 10 defensemen in Blackhawks history. A couple things to let you know about first. Make sure you smash that like button on our YouTube page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Podcasters, make sure you're following or subscribed on your favorite podcast app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You need to know for the next, 48 hours minus however many, you can get a deal on a diehard membership.
Yep.
$60 gets you a diehard membership today. ALLCHGO.com. You're like, $60? Well, what does that get me? Well, first off, you get a free t-shirt immediately upon sign up. So there's half of the 60 right there. You get discounts on all of our events, including our upcoming Bears tailgates. We're going to have 2 Hawks takeovers this year, one early in the year, one a little bit later in the year. So we'll let you know officially.
Bulls takeovers.
Yeah, Bulls takeovers. So you get the shirt, you go to an event. It's basically paid for itself in the food, the drinks, the perks you get at the events, the company you get at the events, and all the money you save at the CHGO locker all the time. $60 for a year. Also, you get access to, during the year, the rebuild report, all the great written content we have locked and unlocked at allchgo.com. This is really a no-brainer. This deal has never been offered by AllCity before. So if you've been on the fence about becoming a diehard, now is a great time to do it. Or if you know somebody who would like it, buy them one.
Yeah, you can do it as a gift.
Yep. Gift subscriptions are available. So today, tomorrow, $60 gets you a diehard membership at CHGO, at allchgo.com. So jump in there, take advantage of this fantastic deal because it really does pay for itself. All right, before we get to our top 10 defensemen, all week, CHGO is unveiling the top 25 all-time Chicago athletes. Yesterday, we gave you 25 through 19. Today,
25 through 21.
Thank you. Yes, I'm good at math.
Counting's hard.
Today is
we were trying to do it before the show, too.
Today is 20 through 16. So, number 20, White Sox star, White Sox legend Minnie Minoso comes in at number 20. Number 19 is Derek Rose. 18 is Billy Williams, 17, Devin Hester, and 16, Fergie Jenkins. So the next 5 will be revealed tomorrow. So there you have it. Anything we need to discuss about those 5?
I figured Derek Rose would have been a little bit higher. But I think having him inside the top 20, I think, is fine. I would have had him a little bit higher personally, but again, that's maybe a generational thing because of Fergie Jenkins and Minnie Minoso and all their impacts that I don't really have any knowledge about.
Sure.
But as a personal thing, I think for me, Rose would have been a little bit higher. And I don't know if I would have Hester higher than Rose.
I would.
No?
I agree with that.
Hester, I don't know if I'd have Hester above Billy Williams. That's a
probably
little bit of
not
my thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Hester definitely, I mean, literally, when the league literally changes the rule book because you're too good at what you do, you're pretty damn good. And that's what the NFL did with the kickoffs. Like, we can't have you running back every kick, so we're moving it up. And he still ran him back. For 5 years, that dude was incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
20 return touchdowns.
He's a Hall of Famer. I know that's a debate for probably a different show.
Yes.
Different beat, but
We have that show.
yes. And but I agree with the people that say Devin Hester should be a Hall of Famer because he was the best ever to do it at that position.
Yeah.
And when you're the best ever to do something, whether it's 5 times a game or 40 times a game, if you're the best ever to do it, Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. Okay, so the way the top 25 at CHGO was chosen was the entire staff submitted their top 25. The way we did it on this show was the 3 of us submitted our top 10 for each of the categories we're doing this week. And our, let's say, number 1, yesterday our number 1 Blackhawks goalie ever was Tony Esposito, I believe unanimously, correct?
No.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. The number 1 vote gets 10 points. The number 2 votes gets 9. They're all plugged in. Greg puts on the Boysenator 2.0, mixes everything up, and then spits out the ultimate result of our combined scores. So that's how we are doing our list this week, which brings us to number 10 on the Blackhawks all-time top defenseman, Pat Stapleton. One of the great Blackhawks of the 60s and 70s, longtime captain, the first NHL defenseman to put up 50 assists until the next season when Bobby Orr put up 87.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it. Most records for defenseman Bobby Orr will have come and shattered. But yeah, I mean it's one of those things. I mean, we talked about it with goalies yesterday, and how the generational thing is different from fan to fan. But Pat Stapleton, one of the guys that you read about, and you it's one of those guys that has that impact in his time that you don't really think about, because it was sometimes overshadowed by guys like Hall and Makita and Esposito all getting the limelight. But Pat Stapleton was right there.
Yeah, long-time defenseman for the Hawks, 8 seasons, and then stayed in Chicago for 2 more years and played for the Chicago Cougars when the WHA launched. Never won a Norris Trophy in the NHL. The best, he finished 3rd in Norris voting his first season with the Blackhawks, 1966, but he won the Murphy Trophy in the WHA for best defenseman. So
there you go.
He got that covered. He did that in Chicago, so that's nice. But Pat Stapleton, as you mentioned, longtime guy, kind of the heyday of the 60s and 70s, came in right after that Stanley Cup, but still spent a lot of time with those legendary names, Hull, Makita, Esposito, Pitt Martin, those type of guys. This is my mom's favorite player of all time.
Nice.
She loves Pat Stapleton. And his son Mike played for the Hawks for a little while, and still a scout in the NHL.
Hawks also went to 2 Cup finals with Stapleton, 71 and 73. Great defender, really good at generating rushes. Just a really solid player for a long time. None of us had the pleasure of watching him, but I think, history deserves, belongs on these lists. And Pat Stapleton, if you talk to longtime Hawks fans, he's on all their lists. So that's number 10. Number 9, Brian Campbell. Now we're into our generation. And, I think we talk about this a lot, how contracts can sometimes cloud people's minds as to how good of a player, how valuable a player can be.
Yeah.
We're seeing it now with Seth Jones. I think Brian Campbell was very much another example of that, where everyone knew the Hawks wanted him. Everybody knew Dale Talon was going to go get him, and he had to pay a lot for him.
Yeah.
Was he worth what he was paid? Probably not. But he was a huge part of the Hawks, and really the first time the Hawks went out in free agency and got the dude.
Mm-hmm.
He was the number 1 guy in free agency that year. Everyone knew they wanted him. He knew they wanted him. He had the Hawks by the balls, and he got every penny he was worth and more. But won a Stanley Cup here, is still with the organization. Brian Campbell, not only for, you can look at the stats all you want, but what he represented as a free agent, what he brought to the team in terms of leadership and experience when they were ready to win that first cup. Brian Campbell, number 9.
Yeah, before Hossa had that impact in the summer of 2009, Campbell had that impact too. It was part of that growing sense of like the Blackhawks on the come up with Taves and Kane coming into the fold, and they had Keith and Seabrook there, but they were still growing, and Campbell came in and was a big part of that team that got back to the playoffs in 2009 and won the Stanley Cup in 2010. Had a quick second stint to end his career with the Blackhawks. And I remember when he came back, being a little bit excited, because it was just like, okay, like they had a need defensively. He was still playing at a pretty decent level, and I thought he could play another year. And when he didn't come back, decided it was over, you felt defensively a bit of a hole that never got filled from when Campbell left. And so it was just kind of a testament to, a guy that could still play well into his, late 30s, making an impact. But yeah, that first run he had with the Blackhawks was an integral piece to winning that Stanley Cup, and I believe got the primary assist on Patrick Kane's 2010 overtime winner. So put that feather in his cap.
Yeah, as Jay, you mentioned, he was kind of like I remember they signed Brian Campbell and Christopher Ballhue on day one of free agency in 2008. And I remember going to work the next day, grabbing a copy of the Sun-Times, as I did every day back then when I worked my real job, and I flipped it over on my desk, and it was the Blackhawks and Brian Campbell and Christopher Ballhue on the front page of the sports section. Now, some of you younger folks listening and watching may not understand what that means or if that's even a big deal. But for the Blackhawks in 2008 to be on the front page of the sports section was like, wow, this must be a big deal. Because, the Hawks were ignored for so long. And this was the start of, you had Kane and Taves rookie seasons the year before.
Yeah.
You started to see some growth. They were in the running for a playoff spot until the end of the year. I believe that they also traded for Andrew Ladd during that season. Patrick Sharp was starting to become a star. You had Keith and Seabrook, so you started to see it coming together, and then they went out and made the big splashes in free agency. It was like the changing of the momentum was changing, and you could see it. And Brian Campbell, again, the long contract, but nobody cared at the time. Everybody was just like, holy crap, we got Brian Campbell. And he was very good for the Blackhawks. I'm not going to say he was a superstar, but I think we realized how good and key he was towards the end of that 2010 season when he was injured, when Alex Ovechkin gave him a cheap shot from behind and broke his collarbone, and he was out from, I think that happened on St. Patrick's Day. He was out until Game 3 of the Nashville series. I don't think he came back for the start of the playoffs.
Yeah.
He came back midway through that series.
Yeah.
And when he was gone, you realized how important he was. Yeah, you had Duncan Keith, but Campbell gave you that other guy that can get the puck up the ice. And for a puck possession team, he was so key to their success.
Absolutely. I was just saying again, like what he represented as a signing too was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go.
And
now they're good.
And he's made good friends with Kyle Davidson and hanging around the organization.
We see him at the
still.
United Center every night.
Yep.
Still there.
Yep.
And probably a future NHL general manager, I'm going to assume.
Could be.
If he's going to be an assistant GM and this rebuild goes the way we all want it to, guys from Kyle Davidson's staff are going to start getting picked off. You see it in every sport. As soon as one team wins, all those assistant GMs start getting GM jobs. So I'm sure he's going to be a future GM at some point too.
All right, next up on the list, number 8, former Blackhawks GM and defenseman Bob Murray. Number 3 all-time in scoring in Blackhawks history, behind only Doug Wilson and Duncan Keith. 514 career points and 1,008 career games for Bob Murray. A guy I never saw play, but when you look at all the defensive leaderboards for the Hawks, he's right there. Longtime player, longtime general manager. Played his entire career, his entire 15-year career with the Chicago Blackhawks, which also helps him out, in when we vote for these sort of things. 2-time NHL All-Star. Just a really solid player.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue when you look at those leaderboards for defensemen, and his name is at the top, in the top 3, top 4, of each category. Hard to argue against that. Yeah, never saw him play, but you can't deny that kind of impact puts him in this list for sure. And if you could put up those numbers with that kind of hairline, like more power to you.
He was the antithesis of Doug Wilson. You had Doug Wilson with the great hair and Bob Murray with the not so great hair.
Yeah.
But this guy is one of only 8 players to play over 1,000 games in a Blackhawks uniform, and put up good numbers as a defenseman. 1977-78, he had 17. He had 19 goals, 51 points. The next season, 16 goals, 50 points. 80-81, he had 13 goals, 47 assists. He had, 7 seasons of at least 30 assists. Now, this is during an era where defensemen were out there trying to be defensemen.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a guy coming up later on our list. Spoiler alerts, but to put up 60 points as a defenseman in 1981, it's pretty impressive. And he was over a half a point per game average over his 1,000 games as a defenseman in the 80s, when outside of a handful of guys, defensemen were not looked to contribute much to the offense. Absolutely.
If we're looking for modern comparisons here to Bob Murray for the younger fans, and look, I never saw him play either. Similarity scores on Hockey Reference: Alexander Edler, Mark-Edward Vlasic, Nicholas Kronwall. Those are some of the more modern names that are comparable to Bob Murray as players. So there you go for a little point of reference.
So he left his feet every time he checked somebody?
I guess so. You got Kronwall. You got Murray'd.
Yeah, could be.
And he had a lot of success as a GM for the Anaheim Ducks until he didn't.
Until he didn't, exactly. All right, number 7 on the list, the heart and the soul when he was on the Blackhawks, the late Keith Magnuson comes in at number 7, another longtime captain. And when you talk about putting up points, that was not Keith Magnuson's game. Keith Magnuson's game was standing up for his teammates, providing leadership. He went on to be the Blackhawks head coach for a while, just completely stressed him out to the point where he just couldn't handle it. Longtime Hawks ambassador, hugely involved with the Blackhawks Alumni Association, truly an icon of the Blackhawks organization. And when you see when he passed away, just how impacted everybody was by his death, Pat Foley especially, him and Maggie were very, very close. You talk about your parents' favorite players. Mm-hmm. My mom's was Keith Magnuson, for sure. Everyone of that age loved watching Keith Magnuson play with that red hair, willing to fight anybody. Didn't always win. Usually probably didn't win most of the fights he was in. But when you talk about the personification of what Hawks fans think a Blackhawk should be, it's Keith Magnuson. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, he was on our tough guys list that we did on Friday, and that was the name of his game. I mentioned it on Friday. Is my dad always would point out when first started going to games with him, when they would do highlight packages, pregame highlight packages and stuff. Keith Magnuson, every highlight that he was in, he's bloodied up. He's got jerseys in tatters, and he's fighting somebody. It was just and. That was his game, and he was, like you said, the heart and soul of those Blackhawks teams at that time, and then the cultural impact too that we take into consideration when we do our lists. What they meant to the organization during and after their stints playing and everything. I mean, he's synonymous with being one of the top defensemen, one of the top players, one of the most memorable players the organization's ever had. And there's the reason his number's retired.
Yep. Yeah, he was more of your prototypical stay-at-home kind of defenseman, a defensive defenseman, not a lot of points in his career. He had 24 assists as a rookie, and that was his highest point total of his career. Never scored more than 3 goals in a season, but that's not what he was there for.
Right.
You look at the penalty minutes. You look at, the toughness. Shirtless
dark guy.
Shirtless dark guy
is a bona fide CHGO fan. He has hung up one of his few shirts, and it is a Duncan Keith.
I think.
I gotta get a picture of
it. That is fantastic.
Well, hello, shirtless dark guy.
I know
we were giving your real name, but you're forever going to be shirtless dark guy.
He put up a Sox jersey yesterday during the Sox show, which was wonderful.
That is awesome.
That is fantastic. Hey, you never know. You never know in this.
Just hope it's not windy business. And it blows away. I'd feel bad.
I'll put it in Slack for you there.
Should be all right.
Yeah, Keith Magnuson.
That's great.
Missed a lot of games the second half of his career.
I wonder why.
He played 589 games in 11 seasons, so do the math. That's 55 games a year. But just the way he played, caused him to miss a lot of time. But, his jersey hangs up in the United Center forever for a lot of reasons, and most of them don't have to do with what he did on the ice. He was just the ultimate teammate, and we spent a lot of time on him on our Tough Guys episode. So if you missed that, that was on Friday? Friday.
Yep.
Was our Tough Guys episode, so go check that out for more on Keith Magnuson.
Absolutely. All right, number 6, before we take a break, a guy that I I think everybody watching the show loves, and is probably criminally overrated in the eyes of the NHL, but not in the hearts of Hawks fans.
Underrated.
Did I say overrated?
Overrated. Yeah.
Yes, definitely underrated.
Underrated.
Nicholas Hjalmarsson.
Yes.
Another 100 one on our tough guys list. Absolute badass, blocking every shot available. Can move the puck better than he got credit for. And I always love to go back to the fact that when asked who Nicholas Hjalmarsson reminds him of, Scotty Bowman said Nicholas Lidstrom.
Well, and Marian Hossa told us right here in the studio that who's the one guy that didn't get enough credit, who's the one guy that deserves, and he right away, without skipping a beat, was Nicholas Hjalmarsson.
There's no doubt about it.
You know, the heart and soul of that team, did all the dirty work. You know, just fantastic. I've said for years that the NHL should have 2 awards for defensemen. The Norris Trophy for the best defensive defenseman and the Bobby Orr for the best offensive defenseman, because nowadays it's the Norris Trophy goes to the defenseman that gets the most points.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
But if there was a defensive defenseman award, Nicholas Hjalmarsson would have won at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, who had the best all-around defensive season?
Right.
Yeah, should be the focus of the award. But yeah, a guy that sacrificed his body night in and night out, blocking shots, laying down hits, being one of those guys that was truly a shutdown defenseman. That you don't see too many of in the NHL, where a guy can make a living and become a fan favorite by just being so defensively sound. And you talk about a guy you can always throw out there and know that he's going to play against some of the top competition and be able to shut them down, and a guy who's going to go out on a penalty kill, in a special team situation and lay down and block shots, 1, 2, 3, 4 shots on a shift, be able to throw his body in front of it and do it willingly. You're not going to see many defensemen be able to sustain that kind of physical toll and be willing to do it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to have some hard days trying to walk in the later years, but he gave it up for 3 Stanley Cups and a lifetime legacy with Chicago. It's probably worth it to him.
I would think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break before we reveal the top 5. Greg's going to talk about our buddy Ray.
Yes.
Not the shady one.
I've got two
Rays.
Two buddies named Ray. I'm the Ray guy here at CHGO. Hey, are you in the market for a new vehicle? If you are, then we've got some great news for you. Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fox Lake has just joined the CHGO team, so welcome to them. At Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicago's largest inventories and find unforgettable savings. And right now, during the Make This Summer event at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fox Lake, you'll be able to take up to 20% off MSRP on select new 2023 Ram 1500 models. Yeah, but maybe you're thinking the interest rates might be too high right now. That's not the case at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram, because now through August 31st, you'll be able to get limited time 0% financing for 72 months on select new models. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram, because they're the only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram only in Fox Lake, or raycdjr.com today, serving the community since 1963. It's a long time.
It's a long time.
That's right.
Am I telling the good people about Goose?
Yes.
Yes, Goose Island.
Please do.
They have lots of good people. Lots of good people and lots of good beers. That is the Goose Island Beer Company. They have been Chicago's beer since 1988, and they are the proud beer sponsor of us here at CHGO, and we welcome their sponsorship and friendship and their beers. Of course, they have the Goose IPA, the 6-time medal winner at the Great American Beer Fest, which is always in style with a citrus aroma and bold hop finish. They got their Tropical Beer Hug, their dry hopped Imperial IPA, which is a 9.9 ABV that is dangerously easy to drink. The Full Pocket Pills, the everyday beer. It is what the Goose Island beer brewers are drinking. Of course, you have the golden cans of 312, their wheat ale, their staple of the year-round Goose Island lineup. And, of course, we are getting to the end of August, which means it's almost September, which means it'll be Oktoberfest season pretty soon. So keep an eye out for Goose Island's Oktoberfest beer coming out pretty soon. It's a good way to usher in the fall. Much better than pumpkin spice anything. Grab ultra fresh brewery exclusive beers like all of these at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or you can go to their tap room on Fulton Street here in Westtown. That's in our neck of the woods. Again, that is the Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
All right, before we jump back in, I want to give a shout out to James Molick in the chat, who told us became a diehard today. Nice. I don't know what took so long. Love you guys. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, James, for becoming a diehard and getting in while it's a discounted rate.
Yeah,
so take advantage of that deal.
Of that sale.
So be like James. Become a diehard today.
Absolutely. And speaking of sales, yes, you can become a diehard for $60, but we've also got our Countdown to Kickoff merch sale going on right now at the CHGO Locker. All T-shirts and hats are $24 at the CHGO Locker, so jump in there. Take advantage of that sale. Take advantage of the Die Hard membership sale that comes with the free T-shirt. And once you're a Die Hard, sale or not, you get that discount at the CHGO Locker. So tons of ways to save on all things CHGO this week. And, of course, we've got our Bears tailgates right around the corner. Boy, can't wait for those. It's going to be an awesome time. All right, now we move in to the top 5 defensemen in Blackhawks history. And number 5, and it's weird to have him this low, but at the same time, when you look at who's above him, it makes all the sense in the world. Number 5, Brent Seabrook. 3-time Stanley Cup champion, 1,114 games with the Blackhawks, 0 with the Tampa Bay Lightning for the record, 464 points, 661 penalty minutes. Just an awesome stay-at-home defenseman, the perfect partner to Duncan Keith. And I do think, had he been on some other team in the league, he'd be a superstar, potential Hall of Famer. I think he's got an argument because of the moments and because of the longevity and because of the cups.
The impact, the cups, the longevity, 2 gold medals with Canada. I think that helps.
No individual like Norris's.
No individual awards. He was an all-star a few times. I mean, there's a case to be made when his eligibility pops up for the Hall of Fame. Definitely a case to be made. At least for Chicago. If and when they retire number 7, it'll be for Seabrook and I would say Chris Chelios as well.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a completely deserved honor for him. And we talk about Keith Magnuson, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, heart and soul kinds of players. Absolutely, Brent Seabrook might be the biggest heart and soul player of that 2010s run of success for the Blackhawks. So, yeah, I mean, could he be number 2 on some people's lists, number 3, number 1 on some people's lists? Sure, but I think in the echelon of Blackhawks defensemen, as far as accolades and success goes, I think this is pretty fair for Seabrook. But it also is a testament to how many truly great defensemen have played for Chicago over the years.
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, Seabrook is going to be remembered a lot for being the more traditional stay-at-home guy, but he could contribute offensively. Yeah. I mean, 2015-16, he had 14 goals, career high, and dude scored some huge playoff goals. 3 overtime goals. Yep. We all remember the one that knocked out Detroit in 2013. A couple of weeks later, he did it again in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final, that crazy 6-5 game where Crawford gave up all those goals to the glove side and still won the game. Suck it, Pierre. And then in 2015, that triple overtime game against the Predators in the first round. That was a game that could have turned the series around, and he got the overtime goal, I think, a minute into the third overtime. So he's had huge moments. So when you say he didn't have the individual accolades, but he still had those individual moments. And, of course, people always going to remember Jonathan Toews in the penalty box in Detroit in 2013. You ask any of those guys who are on those Stanley Cup teams, yes, Jonathan Toews was the captain, but Brent Seabrook was the leader. He was the guy that, and I'm not taking a shot at Jonathan Toews. Jonathan Toews would tell you that he was the guy when it came to being the vocal, pull you by your collar and say, hey, wake up.
Yep.
That was the guy to do it. And I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame at some point. I don't see him being one of those guys that gets in right away.
First ballot.
But I think you win 3 Stanley Cups with any team, and being an important part of 3 Stanley Cups with any team is a really good accomplishment. But to do it on the same team and for an original 6 franchise and to bring the Blackhawks out from beyond dead, I think that's going to help serve him. And he eventually should get in the Hall of Fame, at least I believe.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like Duncan Keith's presence has taken away any of what he's accomplished in the minds of...
They're kind of together.
Yeah, they're like a yin and yang.
Toews, yin and yang, and you had Keith and Seabrook were the yin and yang, and they were a pair for so long, too. I mean... I
can't think of anyone ever saying Seabrook was nothing without Keith, because it's not true.
Right.
It's not true. He was just Mr. Dependable, and we talk about all the time how... With Duncan Keith, you never even really had to talk about him because you just knew he was going to be out there and be great every game. Seabrook was that for a long time, too.
For a long time.
His decline came more quickly because of just the size of his body, the style, the way he plays, all the wear and tear he's had, of course. But, man, like, for a long time, like, both those guys were just like, yep, they're fine. Don't even worry about it. Let's talk about the other 4, or really the other 3.
Right, yeah.
Because you knew Hjalmarsson was pretty much on that list, too.
We take it for granted how good those teams were. When you look at that we're going to have half of our top 6, maybe, will be from that team. We don't know where Keith slots in yet. I think he's still on this list. Maybe not.
I think he's on the list, yeah.
So, potentially, half of the top 6 are guys from the Cup era. I mean, that shows you how special that team was. I don't think that's recency bias either. That's cold hard facts.
Absolutely. All right, next on the list, number 3 is number 3, Pierre Palat.
Number 4.
No, I'm sorry. Number 3 is number 4, Pierre Palat. Long time again, Blackhawks captain. He is 5th all time in scoring for the Blackhawks, 477 points, 10 points behind Chris Chelios, 821 games as a Blackhawk. And when you look at those point totals, you talk about playing in an era where defensemen didn't really contribute offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, Palat was kind of an innovator in that way. Maybe the original offensive defenseman.
Yeah.
And kind of changed the game. Just how we talked about the way Devin Hester played. To an extent, you can make the same argument for Pierre Palat.
Yeah. I think the accolades speak for themselves. He's a guy that, was, if I'm not mistaken, part of that 1961 Stanley Cup team.
Yep,
captain of that team. Was one of the staples of that era. His place in the ranks of the defensemen, and the numbers he put up in the time where defensemen were not looked at as point producers and goal scorers, anything like that, is pretty impressive. The impact within the organization as well, I think, is something to be said. Personally, I had Seabrook ahead of Palat, but I can see where the historical impact within the organization slots him a little bit ahead here. And again, another guy whose number's up in the rafters, and it's there for a reason.
3 straight Norris trophies for Pierre Palat. And then the 3 years surrounding that, he finished 2nd in voting. So he was in the top 2 in Norris voting for 6 straight seasons, all-star for 5 of those seasons. And then Bobby Orr showed up. And, all of a sudden. But, I mean, Pierre Palat had 46 assists in 1964, 45 the following year, and then 46 again in 1967. So he was... 3 out of 4 seasons, over 50 points from a defenseman in that era. This was pre-Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr shows up towards the end of that and of his career, but just one of those guys that those 60s teams just depended on.
Yeah.
He was, to the 1960s Blackhawks, he was Duncan Keith. to those teams, to what Keith was to the Hawks in the 2010s.
Well, here's the crazy thing, and as we talk about him as an innovator and a groundbreaker, I reference the player comparisons a lot from Hockey Reference because I think it's a really nice tool when talking about how to look at older players in the eyes of the modern game. Usually when you go through these things, you see players from every era. You'll see, guys from the 60s, guys from the 70s, 20s, whatever, all sort of mixed in. Everybody who Pierre Pilote compares to is a modern era player. And none of these guys are, maybe there's a Hall of Famer or two in there, but arguable, right?
Sure.
But we're talking about, at the time, there was no one like, in the 60s, Wade Redden, Keith Yandel, Dion Phaneuf, Andre Markov, Brian McCabe, Sandis Ozolinsh, Brian Campbell, Thomas Cabriolet, Doug Wilson. Those kind of guys did not exist. And those are the similarity scores for Pierre Pilote. So in an era where your guys were more like the Stapletons and more like Magnuson, where their job was to defend and be physical all the time, Pilote was one of the first guys to really elevate. All these guys I mentioned, you would say, are either offensive defensemen or all-around defensemen.
Yeah.
That just did not exist in his era. And I think it's really interesting that all of the player comparisons are modern players.
Are modern era players.
Pierre Pilote's style, he could have played in today's game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely, he could have. You can't say that by a lot of guys that played in the 60s.
No.
He was ahead of his time.
He was only 5'10", though, so probably can't play.
Too short.
Yep, too short.
Shall not be named would have drafted him in the first round.
All right, number 3 on the list. We just mentioned him. The man with a beautiful head of hair, still to this day.
Still.
Doug Wilson, good old number 24. Absolute stud in all aspects of the game. An absolute cannon of a shot. Just a great all-around hockey player. When you look at the Blackhawks all-time defenseman, he is number 1 in scoring. 938 games. By the way, that is like 200 fewer than Duncan Keith-ish, and over 150 more points than Duncan Keith. 938 games, 225 goals, 554 assists for 779 points in 938 games. I guess you would say offensive defenseman.
Yeah.
More than half a point per game, but tough as nails, could defend very, very well. Doug Wilson was an all-around stud defenseman and absolute legend for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, of that era where he played in the in the 80s and with the Blackhawks, I mean, he kind of was their version of Duncan Keith, where you never worry about what Doug Wilson is going to do. He's always going to show up and produce and be able to play that role. Numbers speak for themselves. I never got to see him play, but again, talking to my dad of that Blackhawks era in the 80s, Doug Wilson was always the defensive standout, and the guy that Norris winner for the Blackhawks. I mean, it's definitely one of the best to not only play in the NHL, but of course with the Blackhawks.
In 81-82, when he won the Norris Trophy, 85 points in 76 games, and that included 39 goals.
39 goals.
39 goals. That did not lead the league, by the way.
No.
That's crazy.
As a defenseman?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I'm getting to that point here. It's 16. That's assists. 16. 14 power play goals that year.
Wow.
Doug Wilson, I'm glad he finally got his Hall of Fame due a couple of years ago.
Overdue.
Yes, because Doug Wilson was overshadowed because he unfortunately played at the same time as some of the greatest offensive defensemen to ever played a game. A guy named Paul Coffey.
Yeah.
Larry Murphy.
Yep.
Phil Housley.
Ray Bork.
Al McGinnis. Ray Bork. Those guys put up numbers very similar to him, and I think Wilson got overshadowed because a lot of those guys had more, especially Paul Coffey, had more team success. They won Stanley Cups. They had deeper player runs where, a lot of those 80s teams for the Hawks were kind of one and done.
Yeah.
They didn't have very many deep runs, or they ran into Wayne Gretzky and Paul Coffey and those Edmonton Oilers, and they just could, just like the rest of the league, couldn't, keep up with them. I think they had to play those Islanders teams that won 4 straight in the playoffs a couple times. So they just had, he had the bad luck of every year, here comes another new dynasty team to kick the Hawks' teeth in the playoffs. But he was, again, a guy that was an offensive defenseman, but also a very good defensively, but a guy that in an era where you had more of it than you did when Pierre Palat played, but still it wasn't like you see it today. And he was overshadowed by some of those other guys. All those other guys are in the Hall of Fame, so I'm happy that Doug Wilson and his immaculate hair finally got in the Hall of Fame. And word on the street is he wants to get back into hockey. He stepped down from San Jose for some health issues, but apparently he's feeling good again, and he wants to get back into some role. So we'll see where that leads him. But always been a huge fan of Doug Wilson.
I got a comment in the chat. It says, why are we talking about the Hawks on the CHGO channel when it's roster cut day for the Bears? Do better. Well, Chris, this is the CHGO Blackhawks show, as it says on your screen and on the logo. Bears are on a 3.
Yes.
Do better.
Come back in 15 minutes. Watch the Bears show. Do better at telling time.
Exactly. All right, number 2 on the list. A little bit of suspense? Not really. Number 2 on the list, number 7, Chris Chelios. I mean, we talked about him a lot yesterday, or rather on the Tough Guys show.
Friday.
He was number 1 until Duncan Keith came around, right? And just a scorer, led the team in scoring several times, physical, Norris Trophy winner, all around everything, local guy. Obviously, I'm thrilled he's back involved with the organization, because for a while, I was a little bit bitter, and I think looking back on it was a little bit of immaturity on my point, because I was like, oh, he's so in love with being a Red Wing. He always brings the Stanley Cup here to rub it in our faces and everything. He didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
He didn't want to leave. The Hawks traded him and said, this guy's done. He's old. He's got nothing left. Then he wanted to play 10 more years in Detroit at a very high level. So good on him to come back and stick it to Bill Wirtz every time the Red Wings won the Stanley Cup. Guy's an absolute stud, and one of the reasons I love hockey.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not much more to say about the guy. He's just awesome. All-around awesome player.
One of my favorite players of all time. The first jersey I ever got with a name on the back of it was Chris Chelios. Still have it. I don't fit in it, but I still have it. Dude was just he was, and the fact that he was from Chicago made it even more special. Yep. A hometown kid playing for his team.
Yeah.
He had that Chicago tough, blue collar, all those cliches you like to hear, Bears weather and all that mumbo jumbo. But he was like Chicago personified.
Yeah, he fit that bill.
Tough guy. He was on our tough guy list. And Chelios, was hanging out with our buddy Carm before the Springsteen concert the other day, and we were talking shop, and he's like, is there anybody that you still get like starstruck when you see? It's like, nah, I've been around enough players now. For the most part, like nobody currently do I get, oh my God, I can't believe that's so-and-so. But every time I see Chelios at the United Center, either in the press box or downstairs, I still get that, oh my God, that's Chris Chelios. Like, I still get nervous around him. And those are the guys that I still, have that, because I was a fan of them. I never covered Chris Chelios as a job. I was a fan of his. He was one of the best players in the league when my fandom was at like its peak, when I just consumed hockey 24/7. The
1996 Blackhawks, a really good team. They lost in the conference semifinal to Colorado, who went on to win the Cup. Chris Chelios led the team in scoring with 72 points in 81 games. Roenick missed some time. He had 67 points in 66 games, but it was Chris Chelios, Jeremy Roenick, and Gary Suter were your 3 leading scorers on that team. Gary Suter probably has an argument on this list, too.
He was on my list.
Maybe the honorable mention list for sure, because really good player, sidekick to Chelios forever. But Chris Chelios, 72 points.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not often you're going to see defensemen lead their team in scoring for multiple seasons, even in today's day. So for him to do that in that era was really impressive. And like you said, Greg, checks every box of like the quintessential like Chicago athlete, especially for the Blackhawks. And it's great that he's, kind of come back to the organization and been a bit more of an ambassador for the Blackhawks now than he was for the Red Wings for a long time. And when I got into hockey and started watching him, I was watching him as a Red Wing and was just like, oh, he used to be a Blackhawk like in the 90s, and he was captain, and now he's all about the Red Wings. Oh, that kind of sucks. Like, it was always that kind of like, Chris Chelios, all right, yeah, he's in the Red Wings alumni game and all that stuff. But as I grew up a little bit more, learn a little bit more about him, and especially as time has passed and that he's come back to the organization a little bit more, it's great that the impact he's had with the Blackhawks while he was playing, while he hasn't been, while he's been retired. It's awesome. Yeah. So it's I always think back to the story though of the Winter Classic is, you see the Duncan Keith Winter Classic jersey here, he was supposed to play in that game. He was dressed. Mike Babcock was going to scratch him, but he did dress. Played I think like a minute and a half, and then had his kid bring him beers on the bench because he was sitting there the whole game. And it's a shame because he's a huge Cubs fan, playing in Wrigley Field, albeit against the Blackhawks. But it's just a missed opportunity for him to really get the best of that experience. But
Mike Babcock is kind of a pudwhack. Is that what you're
kind
saying?
of? Yeah.
Have fun with that, Columbus.
Enjoy that, Columbus. But that's always one of the funny, like, make the most out of a shitty situation. Like, just grab some beers on the bench and enjoy your time.
Yeah. Hey man, you're made at that point in your career.
I'm Chris Chelios. Yeah. I do what I want. The hatred for Chelios amongst Hawks fans, it's living proof of the time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
Because you don't like. For those first few years, they boo, boo, boo.
Yeah.
And even after he retired, they brought him back for one night, and there were still a smattering of boos. But I think that's kind of gone away.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
People. I get it. Yeah, he was traded. I hated it too. I was like, oh, he said he'd never play for the Red Wings. Well, okay, he was traded, but my argument to that was, well, he didn't have to re-sign there all those years.
Wait, if I was going to
he wasn't under a 10-year contract when he was traded.
If you want to stick it to the Hawks, that's where you go.
Play for the Red Wings. And
you don't want me around? Great. I'll go to Detroit and stick it up your booty holes for 10 years.
Especially on the teams he played on, where half their roster were Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
I don't think he would want to go anywhere else.
My favorite Chelios memory, back-to-back overtime playoff goals to sweep the Canucks in 1995. Great stuff.
All right, just to go over the personal accomplishments. Hall of Fame, 3 Cups, 3 Norrises, a Messier, 100th anniversary team, 7-time All-Star. All right.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good. There is one thing he did I will not forgive him for, and if he was here, I would talk to him about it. The Hawks honored the 75th anniversary team on the ice before a Red Wings game with the intention of Chelios being there, being in the photo. Chelios gets in the photo of all these 75th anniversary Blackhawks, and he keeps his Red Wings jersey on. Mm. So this 75th anniversary team is all these great Hawks, and then there's a lone Red Wings jersey right there in the top corner. He's holding it, but he didn't put it on. That was tough.
Yeah.
Because I'd have that picture in my basement if not for that.
Wonder what his thoughts are on that now.
I'd love to ask him someday.
Yeah.
Maybe we will. All right. Before we reveal the big mystery of number 1, is it Enrico Ciccone? Stay tuned to find out.
He's a number 7 too. It's all about number 7s.
It's Klaus Dahlbeck.
I want to tell you about our friends in my alma mater at Lewis University. Students are just like you with full-time jobs, families, full-time sports fandoms. Lewis is making it easy to go back to school and earn a respected degree. They're 35 miles We are 35 miles southwest of Chicago in Romeoville, and we are ranked as one of U.S. News and World Report's top-tier colleges. Lewis partners with numerous employers for tuition discounts and offers evening, online, and blended formats to help you balance work, family, and education, and their faculty brings real-world experience and instruction to the classroom, which is immediately relevant to your career. We offer career support and academic resources for all adult students looking to complete your bachelor's or master's degree or enroll in a professional certificate program. Lewis has the right program for you. Lewis offers several career-focused programs that will set you up for success I love the cybersecurity program. Lewis is a Department of Homeland Security Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity, providing students with scholarship funding not available elsewhere. They also offer the adult undergrads with computer science, aviation maintenance technology, business analytics, criminal justice, business programs, and tech programs. Discover how a degree from Lewis can help you build a better world. Learn more at lewisu.edu/you can do this and become a flyer like me.
I know it's a little cool today and tomorrow. We've had a little reprieve from the heat, but summer and the sun has not gone away. It's coming back real soon. And take on that big giant sun with gear built to last. From our friends at Shady Rays, they have you and your precious eyeballs covered for the warm weather that's coming with their premium polarized shades that come at a very affordable price. Shady Rays is our favorite independent sunglasses company that offers you a world-class product that's just as good, I say even better, than any expensive pair we've ever worn. Durable frames and extremely clear optics are perfect for all your outdoor adventures. And that's not all. Shady Rays has the most insane protection of all eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. I'm going to have my Shady Rays. We're going back out on the boat on Lake Delavan
nice.
on Saturday.
Nice.
I will have my Shady Rays with me, and I will not worry if they fall out and go into the lake because Shady Rays will send me a brand new pair, no questions asked, so I and you can wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. And together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to all to their nonprofit partners across the U.S. through Shady Rays Impact, from building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime. Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. And if you don't love your Shady Rays, but our fans are hip, they're cool, they're going to love them. But just in case you don't, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop, and exclusively for our lovely, intelligent, beautiful listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal this season directly to you. Go to shadyrays.com, use the promo code CHGO for 50% off all orders of 2 or more pairs of their awesome shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 satisfied customers.
All right, the guesses are rolling in for number 1. And before we reveal, I want to remind everybody to get fitted out in the best sports gear around. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, banana hammocks, and everything in between. Baseball season, get your Aloha shirts, your straw hats, your polos, your bags, everything you need for a baseball game. But the weather is going to be cool and then hot and then cool again. Get ready for those Bears games with your hoodies, your stocking caps, your gloves, your mittens, your boots, everything you need. All of it is at foco.com. Check out foco.com or click the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO for 10% off. That is foco.com. All right, number 1 on the list, and I mean, is there any argument that the best Blackhawks defenseman of all time is Duncan Keith?
Yeah, you're not going to hear any argument from me.
I mean,
we did 6 lists of rankings, and this was one of 2 where number 1 was unanimous.
Yeah.
Where all 3 of us voted number 1. Tune in later this week to find out what the other unanimous number 1 was. But this was a no-brainer.
I don't know, what was he not great at?
Slap shot accuracy.
But he was trying to pass a lot of those times.
A lot of times, yeah. He had a perchance to slap one right into the opponent's shin pads from time to time. But I mean, if a lot of those got through, and a lot of those became, redirections and tips and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you're building a prototypical offensive defenseman in the modern game, absolutely Duncan Keith would be the mold for it. Just the way that he was able to play physical when he needed to, the way he skated, his absolute incredible work ethic and motor, and just never feeling like he was tired out there on the ice, even into his late 30s. He was playing huge minutes for the Blackhawks in those last couple of years, and he was still able to do it so well. So yeah, I mean, he could fight, he could shut you down defensively. He's a guy that you played on the power play, top power play, and could play on your penalty kill.
Yeah,
he is one of, if not probably my favorite Blackhawk of all time.
Yeah, he was a hockey cyborg for a few years. I mean,
he was.
That 2015 playoff run, just insane what he accomplished. Averaging 34 minutes a night. Now, I know a lot of that is skewed because they had quite a lot
of overtime games, but still those are minutes played.
It's just out there every time. And you got to remember, 2015, they had 3.5 defensemen that run.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Keith, Seabrook, Jarmelson, Oduya was hurt, wasn't playing at 100%.
Yeah.
You know, that
end of the line, Oduya.
You were throwing out, you know, rookie Trevor Van Riemsdyk. You know, I know somebody said he's almost as good as Nicholas Jarmelson, but you know, you can, you know, Kimmo Timonen, the corpse.
Timonen was he was
there.
Literally in a hospital bed that August, and then came back and played and got on the Hawks and gave it his all 6 minutes a night.
There was a reason he won the Conn Smythe that year. I mean, he put that defensive unit on his back and was like, "We're doing this." So, yeah. There's no argument. I knew when we were going to put these lists, I knew Duncan Keith was going to be number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have been a little weird if you know, someone else was up there from either you two guys. I'd been like, come on.
Would have rejected the ballot.
We did 6 lists, and this was the first of 2 that was a unanimous number 1.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can make an argument for Chelios, you can make an argument for Wilson, you can make an argument for Palat.
Sure.
3 Stanley Cups.
3 Stanley Cups.
I just
2 Norris.
He's just
Conn Smythe, 2 Olympic gold medals. Like he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer as soon as he's eligible.
If he's not,
it's no question about it. Number 2 will go up in the rafters. He's going to get every accolade that he deserves.
And he's got fantastic taste in music. I watched Bruce Springsteen at Wrigley Field from about 18 feet away from him for 3 hours a couple weeks ago. So,
and then he lost like 7 teeth during the encore and didn't miss a song.
Nope.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right back out there. And our guy, Shirtless Dart Guy, is honoring Duncan Keith today.
Yeah.
Hanging his jersey from the very smoky porch that he's got. He's got it hanging out there right now on his hanger.
There it is.
Casa de Shirt Guy.
Live shot.
Dart Guy, rather. Yeah. Duncan
Lawrence
Keith
was saying that he had a Sox jersey up the other day for the Sox show. Does he watch? Do you know?
He's aware.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
so
you cannot see from outside in from that from that angle.
That's so funny.
So yes, he is a fan.
Carm extended the olive branch across the way one night. They were shouting at each other across the alley there.
That sounds like something Carm would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
So he's now aware of us. He might have been the whole time. Wouldn't it have been weird if he was watching from like day one and didn't realize it was going on literally across the street from him? Yeah. But we appreciate the shout out from our guy.
Absolutely.
Do we want to share any guys that didn't make it that we voted for?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, as I said, we all voted Keith number 1.
Expose your ballots.
Yeah, I can. I'll give you my whole top 10. I had Keith, Chelios, Wilson, Palat, Seabrook 5. I had Bob Murray 6 ahead of Jarmelson just because of all the games played. Keith Magnuson was my 8. My 9 and 10. 9th was Gary Suter, was a name you mentioned. Was a longtime partner of Chelios. And then my 10th was Moose Vasco, who was a big part of that 61 Cup, and his name was Moose.
Yep. My top 10 was Keith, Chelios, Palat, Wilson, Seabrook, Jalmerson, Magnuson, Stapleton, Campbell, and I had Seth Jones on mine.
Really?
Yeah.
I think when his contract is all said and done, you can definitely, hopefully, argue to put him there.
Yep. I mean, he's gonna if he plays out his entire contract, that's gonna be more than half of his career as a Blackhawk.
And
I mean, who knows what's
700,
ahead?
800 games, and
who knows what's ahead?
I just have this weird feeling as the team gets better around him, he's gonna get better.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. My top 10 was Duncan Keith, Doug Wilson, Chris Chelios, Brent Seabrook, Pierre Palat, Nicholas Jalmerson, Bob Murray, Keith Magnuson, Brian Campbell, and I had Johnny Oduya number 10.
All right. Fair enough. Sarah, who'd you have?
Don't even ask.
She was in Italy. just enjoying.
She actually had the perfect ballot. It was all 1 through 10 as we just said them. That was her ballot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. We just took her ballot and put it up there. We're like, you know what? You're better at this than we are.
Yeah. And special thanks, by the way, to Lawrence and Sarah, because these shows are lots of graphics are involved and all that sort of stuff. So thank you for all the extra work they do to make it happen. All right, Greg, what are we on to tomorrow?
Top 10 forwards in Blackhawks history. Should we tease the rest of the week too, or keep it a surprise? All right, tomorrow is top 10 forwards. Thursday is going to be a fun one. Top 10 playoff games in
memorable
Blackhawks history.
Games.
There's definitely some debate because there are a lot of games on my list that got left off, so I got some yelling to do on Thursday. And then Friday we're going to end with the 10 most memorable trades in Blackhawks history, both good and bad.
Could be good, could be bad.
Unfortunately, there's a lot more bad than good on that list.
Why? For playoff games,
that's what makes them memorable.
Yeah, for memorable trades, I had some bad ones, and same with playoff games. Some of those playoff games that were great games that the Hawks just ended up losing, they got to be on the list.
Yeah.
And thanks to young Dangle God for keeping his bit going.
Yep.
He mentioned Patrick Kane, so he had to throw in his 99-cent fine. So nicely done on keeping the bit alive. Still wasn't enough to get us to Slovakia, but we appreciate the effort.
We got close. And, a couple people in the chat also mentioning Connor Bedard at the BioSteel camp. Man.
Dude does not skip leg day.
I have absolutely no concerns that he is going to be a monster in the NHL. No concerns. That kid is 18 years old. He is not small, as some scouts and analysts were worrying about him translating to the NHL game. And he is out there with, stars of the NHL, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, learning from them at this camp, being around them at this camp, skating with them, and I'm sure as more reports from the camp, more videos from the camp come out, we're just going to see him keeping pace with all those kinds of guys, and it just makes me absolutely ecstatic that we are another day closer to the season starting, because the more we get to see of him, he's going to be at the Upper Deck Rookie Showcase with Kevin Korchinski, where they take all the top rookies of the last few years and do some fun stuff for their Upper Deck trading cards and stuff. So that's going to be exciting to see. But, man, we were talking about training camp and prospect camp and all that stuff, coming up. Seeing him play in person, finally seeing him play in person, is going to be such a fun time.
Yeah,
I just cannot wait.
We talked about it today. We are treating preseason games like regular season games. We're going to be there when they're at the United Center. We're going to do post-game shows. So as soon as number 98's on the ice, we're going to be talking about it as if the games count.
We are 1 day less than a month away from our first post-game show, September 28th.
Let's effing go.
Home game against the Blues. So
very excited.
September 28th.
Very excited.
I wonder if that will sell out.
I don't think the 300 level will be closed this year.
Yeah, probably not.
I would bet not.
It was last year. I don't think it will be this year.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. We are back tomorrow, 2 o'clock again, with the top 10 forwards in Blackhawks history. Should be a ton of fun. Until then, for Greg, for Mario, for Sarah, I'm Jay. We'll talk to you on Wednesday on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.